Aston Martin's Formula One car is failing before it even finishes races. Not because it's slow, because it's breaking itself. 2 races into the 2026 season, and the car is already damaging its own battery, forcing retirements, forcing drivers to stop, just to avoid total failure. But here's the part nobody expected. This isn't one problem. It's a chain reaction, a hidden issue inside the engine, creating vibrations so severe, they spread through the entire car, destroying performance, destroying reliability, and possibly destroying their season before race 3. Because just days before the Japanese Grand Prix, Aston Martin has finally revealed what's really happening. And if this is true, then Suzuka won't just expose their weakness. It could completely collapse their project. Subscribe now, because the real cause of this problem is far worse than anyone imagined. Right after Australia, the first signs were already there. But most people ignored them. Because at first, it looked like normal bad performance. A slow car. A difficult weekend. Nothing unusual. But inside the team, they knew it was something else. Because the issue wasn't just lap time. It was behavior. The car didn't feel stable. It didn't feel predictable. And more importantly, it didn't feel safe to push. And that's where things started to get serious. Because during testing, even before the first race, Honda detected something abnormal. Vibrations. Not small. Not occasional. Constant. Aggressive. And directly connected to the power unit. At first, they thought it was isolated. One component. One weak point. Something simple to fix. But it wasn't. Because those vibrations weren't staying in one place. They were spreading. Through the structure of the car. Into the chassis. Into the systems connected to it. And eventually, into the most sensitive part of the entire package. The battery. And this is where everything begins to collapse. Because once the battery is affected, you're not just losing performance. You're risking failure. Complete failure. Which is exactly what started happening. Limited running in testing. Lack of data. Emergency changes before race weekends. And then, retirements. Cars shutting down. Drivers forced to stop early. Not because they wanted to. Because they had to save what was left of the system. And here's the part that makes this even worse. The problem isn't fully understood. Not yet. Because according to Honda, it's not coming from just one source. It could be multiple components interacting together, creating a vibration pattern that's difficult to isolate, difficult to control, and even harder to eliminate. Which means Aston Martin is fighting something much bigger than a simple defect. They're fighting a system-level issue. Something built into how the car works, how the engine connects to the chassis, how energy flows through the entire machine. And when that kind of problem appears this early in a new regulation era, it's not just a setback. It's a threat. Because while other teams are developing performance, Aston Martin is trying to keep the car alive. And that changes everything. Because if you can't finish races, you can't learn. You can't improve. You can't catch up. And with Suzuka just days away, they're running out of time. Fast. But here's the real question. If vibrations are the cause, then what's actually creating them? Because that answer is where this story becomes even more dangerous. The deeper engineers looked into the vibrations, the more uncomfortable the answer became. Because this wasn't just coming from one component. It wasn't just the engine. And it wasn't just the battery. It was the connection between them. The way everything is mounted. The way everything is linked together. Because according to what the team revealed, the area where the battery is fixed to the car is actually vibrating with the entire structure. And that changes everything. Because now you're not dealing with a faulty part. You're dealing with resonance. A situation where different elements of the car start amplifying each other. Engine vibrations feeding into the chassis transferring it into the battery, and the battery taking the damage over and over again, lap after lap. And here's why that's so dangerous. Because batteries in this era are not just components. They are the core of performance, energy deployment, recovery, acceleration. Everything depends on them. So when the battery is compromised, the entire system becomes unstable, unpredictable, and eventually, unusable. Which explains something most people didn't connect at first. Why Aston Martin isn't just slow on the straights. Why they're losing time in every sector. Because if the energy system isn't working properly, you don't just lose top speed. You lose consistency. You lose confidence. You lose the ability to push. And suddenly, the car becomes difficult to drive. Unbalanced. Even dangerous in certain phases. And that's exactly what the drivers started describing. Subtle at first, then more clearly. lack of control, strange behavior under braking, moments where the car simply didn't respond as expected. But here's where it gets even more serious. Because this kind of vibration problem doesn't just affect performance, it affects the driver physically. In China, the level of vibration became so intense that it started to impact the driver inside the cockpit. Discomfort, numbness, a constant disturbance that made it impossible to continue normally. And that's when the situation crosses a line. Because now it's not just about fixing a car, it's about managing risk. Which is why Aston Martin has been forced into something no team wants to do. Operate conservatively, reduce performance, limit energy deployment, protect components instead of pushing them. And that creates a vicious cycle. Because the more you protect the car, the less you learn, the less you understand, and the harder it becomes to fix the real issue. Especially when time is limited. And Suzuka is right around the corner. But here's the key detail that connects everything. To fix this problem, you can't just replace a part. You have to redesign how the system is integrated, how the battery is mounted, how vibrations are isolated, how forces travel through the car. And that's not a quick fix. That's a structural change. One that could affect weight, balance, aerodynamics, everything. Which means Aston Martin is facing a decision. Fix the problem, and risk creating new ones. Or manage the problem, and accept being uncompetitive. And with Suzuka just days away, they don't have the luxury of time. But there's one more layer to this. Because even if they reduce the vibrations, even if they stabilize the battery, that doesn't solve everything. Because underneath all of this, there's another issue. One that hasn't been fully addressed yet. And one that might explain why. Even without the failures, the car still isn't fast enough. And that's where this story takes another turn. One that could be even more damaging than the problem itself. But even if Aston Martin solves the vibration problem, even if they protect the battery, even if the car finally finishes races, there's still something much deeper holding them back. Because when you strip away the failures, when you isolate pure performance, the numbers don't improve enough. And that's the uncomfortable truth. This car isn't just unreliable. It's slow. Across every sector. Across every track. Australia showed it. China confirmed it. They're losing time in slow corners, in high-speed sections, and especially on the straights. Which tells you something critical. This isn't a single problem. It's a combination. A car that lacks energy efficiency. A power unit that isn't delivering enough from the combustion side. And a system that struggles to recover and deploy energy effectively. And that creates a second layer of limitation. Because even when the car is working, it's still not competitive. Which makes the situation even more complex. Because now Aston Martin isn't just fixing reliability. They're chasing performance at the same time. And those two things don't always work together. Because to unlock performance, you need to push the car, push energy deployment, push systems to the limit. But right now, that's exactly what they can't do. So they're trapped. Fix reliability, or chase speed. But not both. At least not immediately. And this is where Suzuka becomes critical. Because this track demands everything. High speed commitment, stable balance, precise energy usage. If the car isn't fully connected, it shows instantly. And if Aston Martin still has to run conservative settings, then the gap won't just remain. It will grow. But here's the part that could define their entire season. Every time they change the battery, every time they introduce a new unit, they move closer to penalties. Because there's a strict limit on how many components they can use. And they're already approaching that limit after just 2 races. Which means the problem isn't just technical. It's strategic. Because even if they fix everything later, the damage might already be done. Grid penalties, lost positions, a championship that slips away before development even catches up. And that leads to one final question. What if the real issue isn't just the vibration, or the battery, or the performance? What if the real issue is that this entire project is still not fully understood? Because if Aston Martin doesn't find that answer quickly, then Suzuka won't just expose their weaknesses. It will confirm something much worse. That they're not just behind, they're lost. And in Formula 1, that's the hardest position to recover from. And this is where the situation becomes almost impossible to hide. Because up until now, Aston Martin could still say this was temporary. A phase. A difficult start to a new regulation era. But Suzuka doesn't allow that narrative. Suzuka reveals the truth. Because this is not a forgiving circuit. It doesn't reward compromise. It doesn't tolerate instability. Every high-speed corner demands absolute confidence. Every direction change exposes imbalance. Every lap pushes the car to its structural limit. And that's exactly the problem. Because Aston Martin's issue is structural, not surface level. Not something you mask with setup. Not something you fix overnight. It's built into how the car behaves, how it transfers energy, how it absorbs forces, how it holds itself together under pressure. And Suzuka will push all of that to the edge. Which means one thing. If the vibrations are still there, they won't just appear. They will intensify. Faster corners, higher loads, more sustained stress through the chassis. Exactly the conditions that make resonance worse. Exactly the conditions that damage components faster. And suddenly, this isn't just about finishing the race. It's about surviving it. But here's where the real tension builds. Because Aston Martin doesn't have a clean solution yet. They have ideas. They have countermeasures. New mounting concepts. Isolation changes. Software adjustments. All designed to reduce the problem, not eliminate it. And that difference is critical. Because reducing vibration is not the same as controlling it. And controlling it is not the same as understanding it. Which means they are still operating in uncertainty. And in Formula One, uncertainty is the most dangerous place to be. Because every change you make can create a new problem somewhere else. You stiffen one area, you transfer load to another. You isolate the battery, you affect weight distribution. You change behavior in corners. You lose performance in ways you didn't expect. And that's the trap. Because the more they try to fix it quickly, the more variables they introduce. Right before one of the most demanding races on the calendar. But here's the part no one is saying out loud. What if Suzuka doesn't just expose the weakness? What if it forces a breaking point? Because if the vibrations reach a level where the system can't cope, then we could see something even worse than retirements. We could see the team forced to drastically limit the car, slow it down, protect it, turn a Formula One car into something that simply circulates. And if that happens, then the gap won't be seconds. It will be an entire category. Which leads to the final reality. This isn't just about Japan. This is about the direction of the entire project. Because if Aston Martin leaves Suzuka without control of this problem, then everything changes. Development priorities, season expectations, even long-term confidence in the concept. And that's why this race matters more than anything we've seen so far. Because Suzuka won't just show how fast they are. It will show whether this car can actually be saved. And if the answer is no, then what we're watching right now is not a bad start. It's the beginning of a crisis. One that could define their entire 2026 season.